Hi there, guys. Ken here. You are the Thrifty Apprentice. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to another Water Soluble Wednesday. In today's video, I am going to be using watercolor markers, which are one of my favorite mediums. This is Touseed watercolor art marker, and the thing that I love about watercolor markers is that they are a lot like alcohol markers in the sense of the body, but the ink itself is a dye-based water soluble ink. Now this is Touseed, and I have been using these markers for some time. There is a full spread layout in a sketchbook done with these markers over on my Patreon. If you guys want to check it out, you can find the video, the link for Patreon in the video description. So I'm starting off by sketching out a wine glass with some champagne in it, and then I pulled a little acrylic sheet. That way I would be able to kind of do what you see me doing there, blending those markers out and grabbing a wet brush in order to bring them over to the paper. Now I'm doing it that way on this particular paper because they don't blend out the best on this paper. So it's best for me to kind of blend them out on a palette and then bring them over to the paper. Now I'm using a peach color. I'm going to be using a yellow ochre, if I had to give it a name, and I'm going to be using a cool gray. So those three markers, along with a fine liner and a paintbrush, are what I use to illustrate this. Now the champagne itself, I wanted to give it more of a blush, peachy feel. Blush peachy feel, which is exactly why I'm using that marker. I'm using the gray marker to add in the shadows, and I'm actually going to be using that gray marker to shadow the peach tone itself. The thing that I have found about watercolor markers or water-based markers is that you can use them just like alcohol markers, with the exception of, with alcohol markers, the alcohol ink inside the marker is what you use to blend the pigment, whereas with watercolor markers here, you're going to be using water to blend the pigment because they do have a solution in that formula that makes them blendable with water. Now you may be used to watercolor markers. Some more popular brands would be like Winsor and Newton, Faber-Castell. They both make pigment-based. Well, Winsor and Newton make pigment-based. I think Faber-Castell's is dye-based, but they are both light, fast watercolor markers. And those are like two of the only ones that I know that are light, fast. Most of them are going to be non-light, fast because they are dye-based. But I do most of my work with watercolor markers inside a sketchbook, so that's not something I'm typically worried about. The body of these markers are much smaller than your average like alcohol marker or watercolor marker, but it does have a brush as well as a chisel nib on either end of the marker, and the barrel is firm just like you would expect from any other alcohol-based or watercolor marker. So in that aspect, you pretty much get the same beast. The difference is these are a much more budget-friendly set. Now, I haven't put out the review for these because I'm waiting on them to come back in stock before I release the review. I don't want them to end up being a part of the Where Are They Now series, but that may happen if they don't hurry up and come back in stock. The illustration in this video, even though it's time-lapse, has been pretty straightforward. It's not really complicated at all. I used the fine liner to draw in all the details to the glass, to put in the deepest, darkest, blackest shadows, just so that the ridges of that glass would stand out. And as I told you earlier, I used the water-based gray marker in order to do most of the shadowing in the glass itself, simply because I knew with it being water-based, I could keep them really light and soft, but still pull off the effect that I need. Once I got everything done with the glass that I felt was right, or I had it up to the level that I wanted it, I started to go back in and add the bubbles into the champagne. And this is where you're going to see me bring in the yellow ochre color, and that is going to lead to the shadow. Now the light is coming from the top left hand side, so we are going to have a shadow reflecting to the bottom right side of the glass on the surface. And I just simply wet the paper behind the glass, and then I use all of the colors that were included in the composition in that shadow. I hadn't added in the yellow ochre at this point, but it is coming really shortly, where you're going to see me go back in. I'm going to first color the bubbles in the champagne with the original peach color. You can use a single color in a composition, give the first layer time to dry, then go back over that color, and you'll get a more saturated dark color. That trick works in alcohol markers too, if you happen to be a person that's interested in alcohol markers. So I'm going to base in a layer of that blush. Then I'm going to go back in with that yellow ochre tone that I was talking about. And because when you use a color in one place, you want to use it as many places as you can, I'm going to scribble it out on my little sheet there. And then I'm going to take that wet brush and just blend that yellow ochre into several different areas of the illustration to kind of make sure it harmonizes across the picture. Guys, after that, I'm jumping in with a white gel pen in order to do my highlighting, and that's going to wrap it up. If you saw anything that you like in this video, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new or if you're returning and you haven't subscribed. You can share the video because sharing is caring, and use the comment section to let me know, what do you think of watercolor markers? Have you used them? Would you try them? You can check the video description for all of the relevant links. And that's going to give you the Facebook group, Patreon, Etsy shop, and the most recommended product list. Now I'm throwing in some sparkles when I do the gel pen just to show you that it's shining. And I'm going to throw some in the shadows, guys. That's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining me. And remember, as I always tell you, just keep painting and crafting.